Get ready! It's time for Motherhood Talk Radio, live on Toginet.com. Motherhood Talk Radio, starring Sandra Beck, is the most powerful voice in women's issues today. As the owner of Motherhood Incorporated, Sandra brings you inspiring, influential, and interesting resources to help you navigate everything from childcare to corporate formation. Motherhood Talk Radio features the powerful voices of Christy Hawley, Robin Boyd, Linda Franklin, Tracy Costin, Danny Kiernan, Susan Haid, and Lisa Dedress. Together, these women bring you everything from the latest crafting tips to how to be sexy in your 40s, from great parenting tips to moms living with cancer, and most importantly, how to bounce back with style. Motherhood Talk Radio helps you make a difference in your world and the world around us. Being all you can be starts right here, right now. Let's do it. Here is your host, Sandra Beck.
Hey ladies, this is Sandra Beck and I'm here on Motherhood Talk Radio, and we are going to have such a great show today. You know, I like to bring the best and the brightest and the most fun women to come on our show and talk about especially like difficult or weird or crazy topics. And today we're going to talk about your best pregnancy, the ultimate guide to easing the aches, pains, and uncomfortable side effects during each stage of your pregnancy. And I know, since this is Motherhood Talk Radio, that everybody out there is listening, you know, has a kid. And whether you birthed them out yourself or you adopted them, I swear these kids can cause aches and pains in so many different parts of your body. I'm like, Dr. Jagroo, I'm like, my neck hurts from carrying my kids around. My back hurts. My hip hurts. You know, and after blowing out 2 kids, you know, you're just not the same down there. So I'm so excited that you're with us today. And we're going to have so much fun because this is the type of stuff that women need to know. They need to talk about. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get started about your book and everything, I want the women listening today to get to know you. So tell me a little bit about yourself, because it's so much more fun when we get to meet the woman behind the book rather than just talk about your book. But your book is great. So, you know, we'll cover that too later on. So tell me about yourself. Where are you from? How'd you grow up? And lead us up to why you wrote this book.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I am smiling really big right now, even though you can't see it. And thanks for having me on the show. I am one of the few board-certified clinical specialists, women's health, physical therapists in the country. There's only a few of us. When I say few, it's about 200 of us, and we're kind of spread across the country, who specialize in women's health, pelvic rehab, obstetric rehab. I attended NYU. I earned my doctoral degree there. I lecture around the country to clinicians, and I've been on this long journey to birth this book over the past 4 years. So that's been an amazing journey that I've been on, and it was first published 2 weeks ago, sorry.
It's fresh, hot off the press.
Hot off the press. It's very exciting. Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, and actually my family is from Trinidad, which is a tiny little island off the coast of Venezuela, and they came to this country and pretty much came with nothing and just worked really hard to provide the best for my sister and I. And I grew up in Brooklyn and now live in New York, in Staten Island, and I work in Manhattan. And I have a private practice there. And yeah, my co-author and I pretty much came together a few years ago and decided to write this book. And I have not had children, but I am a pelvic pain survivor. I am now pain-free, but I suffered from when I was very young with pelvic pain with all kinds of different conditions and inflammatory conditions. And my co-author has had children. We've both been therapists for very long, for over a decade, and we've treated so many women who've come through our offices who have either been pregnant or postpartum with so many pain conditions that they could have prevented or self-treated, and we just wanted to provide a tool, a resource that they can use to help self-manage their own dysfunctions and prevent it from getting so compounded and complex by the time we see them. You know, because we know that they can't get out of the house, and sometimes, and when the new baby comes along, they're not the center of attention anymore, and they've got a lot more concerns, and they put themselves on the back burner. So we wanted them to have something in hand with lots of great pictures and lots of easy to follow instructions and lots of easy tips on things to do and avoid to prevent and treat their own pain.
Well, and that's really great. Like I'm so excited that you're a pain expert. And I know that sounds really weird, but so many people, like, I've been to many doctors over the years. I had 2 kids and I had fertility treatments for my doctors. And I had this great doctor, Dr. Chen, and she was very, very sympathetic of the pain management. Like they shot me full of drugs and my ovaries blew up, with tons of eggs in there waiting to come out. And,
Right.
she explained things in ways I could understand. So it's really great that your book and that you took the time to put pictures and illustrations and tips. And one of the things that is neat too is that you use household items in there. Because, you're right, you get sucked into the new baby vortex, and you kind of cease to exist as a human being other than this lactating, comforting machine. It's overwhelming. And by the time you figure out, like for me, my second one, I suffered from postpartum. Well, I didn't know what was going on to me till like month 4, the lights started to turn on and my friends are like, hey, Stan, do you think this might be happening? Because you're right, your focus is wholly on that kid. You're like, please don't kill it. Just keep it alive. That was my parenting mantra, like, just keep it alive. And, but it's also like kind of a weird, uncomfortable topic to talk about, which is why I'm so excited to have you on today, because it's not like you sit down over coffee going like, how's the new baby? How's the pelvic pain? Is your bladder in your knee? It's awkward and it's uncomfortable. And so I love that you're here to talk about some of these things, because they are, really, they're like almost like shameful little things for women. And then you really only go to the doctor when you're just, oh my God, I just cannot do this any longer.
Right. It's all about, my whole practice and the whole women's health field kind of centers around things that people don't want to talk about. And it's, a lot of times when women are postpartum and they've had 1 kid, 2 kids, and they're still peeing when they sneeze, and they just think that it's normal. It's something that you have to deal with after you have children. And it's not, just because it's common doesn't mean that it's normal. It's muscles. We can still work on it. You can still work to strengthen them, even if after you've had all your children. And people
really.
Yeah, absolutely. They're
See, I'm a sneezer. I sneeze when sometimes I laugh. I'm like, oh God, there it goes again. And, so you can actually fix that after the fact. I thought you were just busted since the kid came out.
And I think these are the misconceptions that women have, but they're muscles just like any other muscle. They can be tight, they can be weak, but you can rehab them no matter how old you are or how far postpartum you are. It's just that they're tough because you can't see them. It's not like your bicep and you can pump them up like Popeye and see them. They're on the inside, and that's the problem. The whole battle of the therapy is usually trying to find the muscles, because everyone, if you have to go to the bathroom or if you're laughing or sneezing and a little bit comes out, you squeeze your knees together or you squeeze your bum trying to hold back gas or something like that. But those aren't the muscles. The muscles are on the inside. So that's usually the challenge, is trying to find the muscles and getting them to recruit when they need to recruit, and then relax when they need to relax. But, people don't want to talk about that, or they just assume that it's natural and normal. And then, and then on the other side, there's a lot of women suffering in pain with intercourse. And that's definitely something they don't want to talk about, but it affects intimacy. So, a lot of women postpartum, they have pain from episiotomies, or they have, trauma from labor and delivery, or they tear, and then it scars down. They can develop neuralgias, where there's a irritation of the nerve in the area, and intercourse can be very painful, or just sitting or just going to the bathroom, but they're just so embarrassed to or even just wearing underwear. It's really uncomfortable, and they don't want to talk about it. And, that's just not their focus. They're taking care of this newborn and probably another kid that they have running around. So it's important that we wanted to add all these things into the book. So we have a whole labor prep and recovery chapter where we say, do these different stretches to help that area stretch out before you give birth, so that you're not tearing as much, or you're not tearing at all, or you don't need as much of a cut from the doctor with the episiotomy, so that you can recover faster. So, these are things, like I said, people are not really chatting about with their friends, especially because there's an intimate component. It's affecting their marriage, it's affecting their relationship with their partner, and it's important. So we wanted to add that into the book.
Well, it's hugely important. Like, I'm a voracious magazine reader, Dr. Jagroo. I get tons of magazines, and like, like I get my Shape magazine and my Fitness magazine, and they're like, all these stretches and stuff like that you do. Like, I ran a few marathons, back in the day, and I do little ones now. Like, I did the breast cancer run last year in my mom's name at Dodger Stadium. But, I started prepping in like December for March, and, I'm doing my stretches. I'm doing all these things. I'm an athlete, and I swam from the time I was like 5 to college and played soccer. It never occurred to me in a million years to prep my body for labor. And now that you said these things, I'm like, my first kid was a 3-day labor. My second kid was a 2-day labor. And it's like, that's like marathon running. And yet we don't, you know what I mean? We don't talk about it as women going, okay, you need to get your body in shape for the birth. Like, and I walked and I swam and stuff like that. So, but it's like, you know what, really, my biceps, they looked cute in the gown, but they didn't really help a whole lot pushing that baby out. So,
right.
I think what you're talking about is really vital. And, I got all those pregnancy magazines, and they didn't cover a whole lot of this stuff.
No, it's so true. They kind of go through, I mean, a lot of the information too is not always correct. I've just seen a lot out there where they say do crunches and do abdominal work certain ways, but there's something called the diastasis recti, which is the separation of the abdominal muscles. And I've had a lot of women actually come through my office who got this separation from the abdominal muscles from a prenatal class or a yoga class or personal trainer. Women have to be really careful about what they're reading and what they're, the classes that they're going to, because sometimes these, the instructors are not certified in obstetric care, and they don't know these positions and exercises to avoid. You want to avoid sit-ups. You want to avoid being on your hands and knees. You don't want to be doing certain exercises where you're in too much of a deep squat to affect the pubic symphysis, which is the front of the pelvis. Like you want to, not until you're getting later into the pregnancy and towards labor do you want to start stretching out. And it's all time dependent. And, women just really have to be careful with what they're reading and all this information that's being posted by people who are not accredited, on the internet. And that's everyone's kind of go-to these days. So you just have to be careful. So we wanted to add that into the book as well.
Well, yeah, that's really important because, I bought this thing, Fit Pregnancy, whatever, and and I enjoyed it and stuff like that, and it was fun workouts. But you're right. I mean, at least this was a published book by, people who knew what they were doing. But, it's like I go to the gym and, the girls are like, hey, why don't you, take Zumba? Why don't you do this? And, and you're like going one way, your belly's going the other way. But, it's fun, like, and you can almost like tell like things that just feel wrong. Like when you were talking about the squats, like I know one of the workout classes I did, and I was maybe 6 or 7 months at this point, and I was doing the step like that. And every time I took the step up, like I went up and my belly went down, and I thought, okay, this doesn't feel right. Like this is not, it's too jarring. And, but you're talking about like some sneaky little muscles in there that we don't even know we have. So they're not going to blow the whistle and, like stop until after you had the baby and you're like, okay, now I hurt.
Right. And it's some of the tips are just really simple, just little movements to avoid or little movements to do to help protect your back, protect your pelvis, protect your abdomen. And I just get worried sometimes with some of the information that's out there that's not correct, that's encouraging women to do the wrong movements. You have to be really careful with the abdomen because it's really difficult to rehab that separation of the abdominal muscles. But yeah, I mean, the most important thing is kind of listening to your body. Like you say, a lot of women just know when something doesn't feel right. If it doesn't feel right, then you just stop or you lower the intensity of what you're doing. A lot of it is just listening to your body.
Well, yeah. And do you find like, once once I shot my kids out, and I had, I had the worst neck and shoulder pain. Like I expected all this pain in my hips. I expected like, all this belly pain and stuff like that. But like that's that thing of like, where you have the baby like in the crook of your arm and you stick his head by your neck and you're like wandering around the middle of the night going, would you just stop crying?
Yeah.
And the breastfeeding position, which, looks so peaceful on like in pictures. I was in agony, like with my back and neck. And I don't know if it's because I'm a computer tech, so I spend too much time on the computer, but like those are way different muscles than you use. Like you're not carrying, like unless you're a running back, you're really not carrying a baby in that position.
Right.
Do you find that women come in and complain that, like that they're having these things, or do we just all suffer through it? Because I just suffered through it.
No, women totally come in. I mean, I see women throughout their pregnancy, and every month is something different. So as their breasts are enlarging, they're starting to get more neck and back pain because they're supporting a bigger weight in the front. And then once they have the baby, they're breastfeeding and they're carrying the baby around, they have neck and shoulder pain and upper back pain for sure. And there's tons of things you can do, even just with positioning, just, using a boppy pillow for breastfeeding so that you're not supporting the weight of the baby. Or if so many women have multiples now, and they have these different multiple like pillows, for twins and triplets and where you can set the babies down and feed them at the same time. And there's something called the table for two, where it's kind of like a double car seat where they can sit and both feed at the same time when they're still too little for high chairs and stuff like that. So it's just little things like that to help you take the stress off you when you're feeding or carrying around the baby. And then we have different exercises to help strengthen and stabilize your upper back muscles and your neck and different stretches. There's definitely ways to help relieve those kinds of symptoms.
Well, yeah, and if you made a workout for moms that are especially fertility moms, most likely you're going to get pregnant, at some point, or at least,
right.
The fertility clinic wants you to think so. But, to have a workout component to be to stretch, even before you're pregnant and start working those muscles. Because for me, I wanted to have the Lexus of uteruses. So I went to this nutritionist and they're take these supplements, eat these foods, drink this, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. I was really serious because, I didn't have my kids till later in life. So I didn't pop them out at 20 and they didn't come naturally. So it was an effort. And I think, there's a lot of moms today, 35 and above, like the old moms. I imagine when they say, oh, well, you're an older mom because you're 35. And it's seriously, I got moldy eggs. What are you telling me? What are we doing here? But we are older having, my girlfriend just had a baby at 47 and, we're fit and we're healthy. But the thing was, we all got educated. We had successful careers. And then we started having our kids, 35, 38. And your body is different. I had the girl that was in the room with me at the hospital. She was delightful. We had so much fun. We had our babies at the same time. She was 22. I was 36. And I will tell you, she popped right out of that bed and went to the bathroom. And I'm like, oh, we got to get up. You could see the 12 years and, and I'm athletic and fit and she was just skinny, but, it was, you could just see her recovery was faster. So, what do you recommend for women who are, not 25 and, spry in their fertility years, that are more like me, that are, 35, 36 plus in their, and having babies, or even 45 plus and having babies?
Well, first, I always like that you keep saying that you either popped, shot, or blew your kids out.
They did, because one of them, I was in labor for so long, Dr. Jagroo, and it was like, oh my God, is this ever going to end? And then it was like a fish swimming out. It went, whoom, just like that. There wasn't any huffing and puffing. And my second one, they sat me up, they're like, Miss Beck, it's time to push. And I'm like, what? And then all of a sudden I'm like, whoop, baby's there. That's the epidural aspect of it. But, they don't always have to be the grunt and grind. But I found that my body preparing up to the actual birth part, the birth part seemed, and maybe it's just me, but it seemed like that part was really fast. It was the, 37 hours leading up to it. That just seemed like an eternity. But yeah, your body's exhausted. So, what would you tell me, at 45, if I decide to have another one, what would you tell me to prepare differently than you would say if I was 25?
Well, there are changes that happen in the body over time. So there are connective tissue changes. There are different, fatty deposits that happen in the muscles that affect how well they recruit and contract in the pelvic floor. But I will say that, like you said, doing a whole labor prep and pregnancy prep throughout the pregnancy, like just making sure your muscles are strong, not waiting until close to labor and delivery to start doing the exercises, but doing things to stabilize your muscles, either in your pelvic floor or in your back or in your shoulders, to get the environment ready and get your body ready to support what's going to happen later in the pregnancy. So, and not, waiting to that point. So there's so many different exercises and stabilization techniques that you can do, and different things to avoid the onset of pain syndrome. So even just something little we have in the book is like people have pubic symphysis dysfunction. So that's the cartilage in the front of the pelvis. So people can get tenderness in that area because throughout the pregnancy, there's a hormone going through your body called relaxin. And it does just that. It relaxes. And ideally, it would just work on the ligaments and the cartilage in your pelvis at the time of delivery, just to allow the pelvic bones to relax, to allow the baby to drop and be delivered. But it's systemic and is being released throughout the pregnancy, and it affects all the connective tissue. So what happens is sometimes it works a little too good, and it affects the cartilage in the front of the pelvis a little too much, and the pelvis separates a little more than it should in the middle of the pregnancy. So there's little things to do, like when you're getting up from sit to stand. A lot of women have pain with that during pregnancy, but if you just if you've got your purse with you, you can put your purse in between your knees and squeeze the purse as you're going from sit to stand. Or you can just squeeze your knees together or put your fist in between your knees and go from sit to stand. And that'll actually help stabilize the muscle and stabilize the front of the pelvis, and that'll decrease pain. And it's just a little trick that you can do throughout your pregnancy so that you don't start to develop pain in the front of your pelvis.
Well, yeah, and anybody can squeeze their knees, and usually you have, you have a hand. If you're missing a hand, you get in trouble. But right, I mean, that's a very practical, easy, and is that what women will find in your book? These just ridiculously easy, simple solutions, like put your purse or put your hand, your knee there to get up. Because I know what you're talking about. You feel that little sharp pain, right. And it's like a weird little pain that just goes oh, wow, that did not feel good. Right. But, pregnancy just in general didn't feel good. I don't know, it's amazing that the species continues, because it was up to me, we'd be
these are the things we have in the book. Lots of easy, simple solutions like that women can use throughout their day. When they're going for their doctor's appointments and they're sitting for a long time in the waiting room, and they get up and they get those pelvic pains. Just different ways to move or not move to try and reduce these kinds of symptoms. And we have fun little side boxes too, where we have fun tips and fun facts, like why you get momnesia.
Why do you get that?
Because you get pregnancy brain because of basically all the hormones that are going through your body, and it's such a surge that your brain actually starts to rewire. It starts to the circuitry changes, and you only have so many shelves in your brain for information, and the top 3 shelves are pretty much being taken up by baby stuff. So where you put your keys and where you put your wallet and all that nonsense, and where you put your phone, that's not priority. So it's all that and it's a whole evolutionary thing. All that your body is concerned about and your brain is concerned about is where's the baby? Where'd you put the baby stuff? What do you have the nursery ready and all that stuff, but not the other things that were important to you before, where did you put your cell phone? So it's all because of this surge of hormones, and it actually has this neurological effect on the brain. And so, you start to, and then your brain actually changes in size, and it doesn't go back to the size it's supposed to be until 6 months later. And they have studies on all of this, and we included all that information in the book. And it's amazing how the woman's body and brain changes so much just to be totally focused on the baby. So that's why you get pregnancy brain, because you are just focused on the little one, and it's just a neurological thing that you can't control.
Wow, that is fascinating. Like,
Yeah.
not only does your brain swell, but like, because I was like, oh my God, I'm dumb as a bucket of tar because I can't, my work especially requires like very in like a lot of like memory of codes and memory of strings and
Yeah,
like usernames and passwords. And I struggled so hard. It was like I was in a fog. And,
totally
I
normal.
wow. See,
Mhm.
why don't we tell women this stuff? Like, because we walk
Right.
around all feeling like, idiots going, what the hell is wrong with me?
Right. Totally natural, totally normal. It's a neurological thing. Isn't that amazing?
That
And
is.
yeah, so we give little tips about like put post-it notes on your. I was gonna say put an alarm on your phone about where you left your keys, but then if you lost your phone, then you'd have to have a post-it note. So put notes all over your house, like where you left things, because you need to remember where you put whatever down, and that's not going to be your priority. So that's that. But then we have other information about like your rights in the workplace as a pregnant woman, and there are actually laws that protect you if you need accommodations for your workspace in if you need to accommodate your desk because you don't fit in it, or if you need to take more bathroom breaks and you need to disappear for a little while even more, there are laws that protect you. There are different regulations that protect you after pregnancy because you need to go pump or breastfeed or whatever, but there are actually regulations and stuff that protect you during pregnancy. So lots of information like that too.
Well, and what it sounds like what I'm hearing here, and what sounds really attractive to me, like, and I'm so sorry that you didn't write this book for me when I had, but like everything out there is all focused on like the baby, like, oh, the fetus at 21 weeks and one day has another eyelash.
Right, right.
It's like, and that's kind of cool. Like I was a voracious reader of those things, and I was like,
Mhm.
because you can't look in your own belly, and I'm like, oh my God, there's this alien creature growing in there. Like, what's it doing in there? And
Right.
but the focus is so much on that, and the focus is so
Mhm.
much on what does your nursery look like and your layout. And I remember I went into premature, both my kids were preemies, and I went to premature labor at 31 weeks for my
Oh,
first son.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't have the layout. I didn't have the hospital bag or anything. In fact, I had gotten off the freeway, come home to work, took a swim in the pool because it was like 105 out, and then I got out and I'm like, oh, that's not good. My water broke. I'm like, oh, that's not from the pool. And so what I did was I went right to what I usually do. I went and I packed my lunch. I got my computer bag. I got all my work, and I headed to the hospital, which is really funny now when I think about it. And,
Mhm.
I got to the hospital and, 3 days later, obviously had the baby and he was fine. But I remember the nurse getting so mad at me, and she's like, like, do your breathing, do your breathing. And I'm like, oh, class starts next week. Like, because I hadn't gotten that far. And you're right. You're like, you just do the silliest things. But I always thought that was just me being me. I didn't realize like pregnancy brain, like now I have an excuse. Like that whole
Yeah.
thing, bringing, why do you bring a laptop, an iPad, and, sheaves of contracts, to the hospital, have a baby? Well, you know what? I guess that's what executives do because that's how I go out the door. But the
Right.
focus really needs to be what I like is like, this is a book for me. Like, this is not
Mhm.
just about the baby because, quite frankly, the baby's not here yet. And I think there's enough stuff out there about like what the baby's doing in there.
Right. That for sure. And there's apps. There's apps on your phone that can tell you, the next eyelash that grows on your baby, per day and stuff like that. And there was also a lot of nutrition books. Like we went to Barnes and Noble when we were getting the idea to write the book, and there's a lot of similar books out there for like nutrition, what you should be eating, but not a lot for pain. And the women are just going through so much discomfort during the pregnancy, and there was nothing really out there from the point of view of physical therapists. And we're the ones seeing these women in pain and seeing them postpartum. And we didn't feel like there were sufficient tools out there for women to use as resources to help them take care of themselves. Everything is always about, like you said, the belly, the bump, and what the baby's doing on the inside, but not about the the oven itself, it was just about the bun, you know?
Right.
So we wanted to give something to the mom so they could focus on themselves. And there's a lot of great information. Also, we have tons of side boxes and information, stories from actual patients of ours and the authors themselves. My co-author and I, we offered a lot of stories about how we overcame pain. And so we included a lot of real scenarios from real patients where they talked about what they were going through, and they're all very funny. And, and how what they did to overcome their pain, and how they became pain-free, and how my co-author and I became pain-free. So it's a very personal and personable and relatable, so people don't feel like they're reading a textbook. It's a cross between What to Expect When You're Expecting and The Girlfriend's Guide to Pregnancy. It's very fun to read. It's not scary. And there's a lot of stories that women can relate to.
Well, and I think that's really important, what you're talking about, because, I didn't have the Girlfriend's Guide to Pregnancy, but I had What to Expect When You're Expecting. That was kind of like the Bible, but
right.
it really did cause a lot more stress than it did.
Anxiety, right?
Yeah. And, and I had to shut off the Discovery Channel, because when I had my amnio, they're like, there's the head. And I'm like, how many? That was the first thing I wanted to know. And he's like, there's a foot, there's two, right? There's only two feet in there. But the thing about pain is, I still do. I've always suffered from incredible headaches. I just get incredible migraines. And that was really difficult for me in the pain management thing. And this is, Dr. Jagroo, this is a true story. I go into the pain management thing at the hospital because they're talking about people with chronic illnesses, chronic things post-pregnancy, and pain management. And this girl sitting next to me, I kid you not, this is in LA. Okay, so she raises her hand and she's like, well, I did cocaine, the first trimester, and, what's going to happen to my kid? And I'm in my head going like, oh man, you really messed that kid up, kind of that whole thing, going on. And then they did this slide up there, and they're like, she says to the girl, well, you're not doing it anymore, so the baby's probably fine, and, your body is amazing, and the baby's amazing, and da 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 da. Then she puts this slide up, and she's like, drugs to avoid. They're like, I'll leave. And I'm like, okay, so she can do cocaine, right, and I take a leave, and now I've damaged his neural system for the rest of his life.
Right.
It's so it's just so overwhelming, and pain management is really tough when you're pregnant, because you just can't go down 500 ibuprofens to get rid of whatever you have.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you had all the migraines during your pregnancy as well?
I've had them since I was 6 years old. It's a chronic condition, and they were different during my pregnancy. I usually always get them on one side of my head, and I started getting ones that started like a band between my forehead and go around the back, and it was just interesting. Even though I still had the same pain issues, it manifested differently. It wasn't the same. That's why I'm curious about that rewiring, that your brain does. Mm-hmm. My pain path, it would always usually run a similar pattern, like a ball at the base of my neck, go up, wrap around my eyeball, and then it would feel like an alien's clawing out my eye, and and I'm familiar with it. So as soon as I would feel the onset, I could take naproxen sodium or whatever it was I was taking at the time. But because of my pregnancy, I couldn't. So it was really weird. And I started doing all sorts of strange things. I invested in all these different hot packs and cold packs, and I was wrapping my head like a mummy anytime I could, because I couldn't do my typical pain management that I did. And then funnily enough, I got divorced and half my headaches went away. I mean, it's actually true. They did. I still have them, but your body does respond differently during a pregnancy.
It does. But it's interesting that you bring up that after the divorce, you felt better, because stress really does have such a huge impact on pain and inflammatory conditions. And what I tell patients is there is a whole central nervous system connection to pain and inflammatory conditions. And I say, one body part needs to talk to the other body part. And I say, you hope that they're talking nicely to each other, because they need to regulate and they need to make sure that the other is doing the other's function, which is great. But then once you're in pain, and if that turns chronic and you have inflammatory conditions or whatever type of irritation in one part of the body, they can start spreading bad gossip to other parts of the body because there's a whole bunch of places where they can cross information. And once you start having that cross sensitization, they actually call it central sensitization. So your central nervous system just becomes hot. And then you have to do very simple things, very simple stress relaxation techniques to reset that tone from the brain to your body, from your brain to the pelvis, from your brain to the bladder, whatever it is that's acting up. And, when it becomes chronic, it just becomes so compounded because so many different systems can be involved. But a lot of times we treat, and this is the problem with the pelvis is you can have so many conditions that mimic each other, and women go out and they go to CVS and they just try to buy whatever to try and treat it, and they can be causing more problems. And a lot of times it's just stress that's causing it, and that's what caused a lot of my problems too, which is funny because I ended up breaking up with a boyfriend that was causing me a lot of stress, and that helped a lot of my conditions too. And once you start doing these mind-body calming techniques, you start to calm the central nervous system and reset that autonomic tone to the pelvis. And then you can actually affect pain levels so much by doing that. But people just think it's kind of hokey, like doing, meditation or visualization or deep breathing techniques. But it has a huge, huge impact on the neurological system and calming down pain syndromes. And I make that a part of all of my sessions, but especially my pain patients and my pregnant patients, like to get them to just calm down, within the scope of my practice, whatever I can do to help them manage their stress. But we always spend about 5 to 10 minutes at the end of each session just doing some kind of relaxation technique, because that makes a huge difference. You can do all the physical stuff you want, and you can stretch, and you can, do manual techniques and whatever. But if you're not managing your stress, you're going to be manifesting it in some kind of pain syndrome along the way. So that's something that's really important.
Well, and I think you're right on, because it's only recently, Dr. Jagroo, that one of the people that came on one of my other shows sent me these meditation CDs. His name is Dr. Joseph Gallagher. And what was happening, and, and this is something that, like, I want the listeners to know to kind of back you up on what you're talking about is, like for somebody like me who has chronic pain, I have arthritis in my spine and my neck, and I have, obviously these chronic headaches, but, it was too overwhelming to me to do a meditation by myself. Like, to be honest, I felt stupid. I'd fall asleep. I'd get bored. I couldn't focus. But then, and this is why, for women out there, for all of us, when I had a CD, like he sent me this CD, and I could put it in my iPod, I put it in my player in my bedroom, and I don't have to do anything. Like, I know we're already a lazy instant society because of social media. But the idea that, like, for women out there, if it feels overwhelming to you or stressful, like to me, to tell me to meditate at the point that I was and I get sometimes is like, you might as well hit me in the head with a tube sock. Like, it's just not it's not gonna work. But if you hand me a CD and say, okay, I want you to listen to this before bedtime, I want you to listen to this when you get up, I want you to, do whatever. And, there's lots of relaxation CDs out there, but like, I'm like a good, like, monkey. It's like, if you hand me the banana, I'll eat the banana. If you make me go pick the banana, we're out of luck. But when you're pregnant and you're overwhelmed, you have so many things to do. Like, ladies out there, like, go download something from iTunes, pick a couple. If one doesn't work, try another one. Some of them stink. Some of them are good. I like Dr. Joseph Gallagher's thing, because he says this thing. He's like, and this is your time just for you. And you can relax. And, for many of us, especially as women, we almost need somebody to give us permission to relax.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Because
absolutely.
You've got, like, look at you. It's like, you've got to practice. You've got the demands of your patients. You get the demands of your boyfriend. Now we'll throw a couple babies in the mix. How about a dog, so that you can just really go over the edge. Yeah, get a puppy when you have a newborn. That's what I did. That's a really good idea. But, if you tell me what to do in a manner that I can do it, I think most people will do it. But we as women don't ask for help really about anything.
It's true. And I always give my patients, and who is ever asking me about meditation, or whoever I'm recommending it to, I give them lots of options, because I know people are either averse to it. Either they think it's religious, or they say I can't clear my head, or I can't just sit there, or I can't. And there's so many different ways you can do it. You can, listen to a guided meditation. You could just listen to ocean sounds. You can chant. I mean, so many people do different things. I listen to guided meditations. They're different free apps. There's so many different free apps that you can download that have timed ones. So it's just, you're just putting aside 5 minutes, or if you have more time, like 15 minutes. And if you're taking the time to watch television or something like that, you could take those 5 minutes or those 15 minutes to do a meditation. And they're, you don't have to even buy CDs. You can just have them on your phone, and they're easy access. Or if you have a commute or something, just listen to it in the car. And they're, everyone's going to respond to something different. So I always make sure that I tell patients there's different ways to do meditation, and it doesn't have to be one way. If you don't respond to it, then there's other options.
Well, yeah, the point is just to try, because I wish I had known about that, because, I was running an office in Beverly Hills, a very high-powered office. I had an hour-and-a-half commute. It's like, gee, what a shock I had 2 preemies. What a shock I had trouble getting pregnant, So, you look at the cumulative effects of stress, and now, 10 years later, and I have this lovely show that I can be enlightened and educated. I didn't know. I didn't even know what meditation could do. And I was, just like some of your patients where I'm like, was this some weird religious thing? Because I already pray on Sundays, right. Because you don't know. You don't know. But if you tell me, like, it calms my brain waves, that it's better for the baby, that, the bun will stay in the oven longer, that would have gotten my attention.
Right. And especially during pregnancy, women just have so many things that they're stressing about. I mean, fixing the nursery and getting everything ready, and baby showers and registries and all that stuff. So, just taking the time for themselves, it makes a difference in the body.
Well, yeah, and you're creating human life,
right.
That on the list,
right, that little stressor. Right.
So what do you do, like, when women come in and they, like, some of us can't even articulate, like, what the pain is, like what I want to give women today is, like, when they come to see somebody like you, or they pick up their book, and I really think everyone today, if you're pregnant, or somebody who's pregnant, get Dr. Jagroo's book and give it to them as a gift, because it's, I wish I had that when I was pregnant. But from a medical perspective, like, somebody like me who comes in and I'll be like, my eye hurts. And Dr. Chen will look at me and go, okay, well, what are you doing when your eye hurts? I don't know, blinking, like, what is your, like, do you think people should write a list out, like, of what, because, doctors are busy, and, you can't spend, like, I'm lucky I get an hour with you on the phone for my free therapy session today. But, most doctors don't have that amount of time. They have, like, I was reading something about, 7-8 minutes, whatever they get to spend to a patient. So
right.
how can pregnant women, especially who are in pain, make that, 7 minutes count? Because, we need to deal with really what is. And, do you suggest, like, writing down a list, or, bring in a journal, like how do we communicate quickly to the doctor so the doctor can better assess and help us?
Well, absolutely. I think even more so than the fact that the doctor has 7 minutes with you is that the women have pregnancy brain, and they're probably forgetting to mention half the things, so they need to totally keep a list. And I always tell patients to, like, use their iPhone. There's, like, that note section. They can jot down something. They can use Siri. You can dictate into the phone if you just have, like, you don't want to text it out or whatever, and just totally keep a list. Because I do spend a lot of time with my patients, and they always say to me, oh, I went to see my doctor today, but I forgot to tell them this, and that, and I only had, they were really rushed. There are a lot of people in the waiting room, so then they're telling me, and, I do what I can within the scope of my practice to help them. But, they really needed to to mention it to the doctor. And I would say, write it down, write it down. I'm a dork. I write it down. Anytime I'm going to the doctor, I make sure I take my little list with me. I always have a little notebook in my purse. And because you don't want to have to wait again for the next appointment to address a symptom or something that they're worried about. So for sure, writing it down is important, especially for the pregnancy brain part.
So is it weird to be a doctor and go to the doctor?
A little weird.
You know?
But it's all good. I mean, I have my specialty, and I have all kinds of like GI issues. I'm always at the GI doctor, but I really have managed a lot of my conditions from just having a diligent daily meditation practice. And my practice is literally sitting on a cushion in the middle of my bedroom with like a candle, an incense, and like ocean sounds, and just trying to clear my mind. And that, I realized, was such a key point. I was just stressed so much every time. Like, that's what I noticed, was every time I was stressed, I would have a flare up of all of my GI issues and my skin issues and, pelvic pain issues. And then once I learned to do this every day, your body creates a biorhythm. And as soon as I get into that position where I just sit on this little cushion in the middle of my bedroom, my body knows like, oh, it's time to relax. And I focus on my breathing, and I am able to control a lot of my issues. But when I have, I'm trying to control myself because I know that Thanksgiving is coming up and the holidays. And so I'm trying not to go too crazy and flare up my stomach.
Well, it's hard. I mean, holidays are stressful, and when you add a pregnancy on top of all this stuff, or like you have, like I know my when my one son was like 3 months old, the other one was like 3 years old, and he was just coming on the cusp of like really getting, really getting into holidays and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, I just want to sleep. And, I should have leveraged some things, you know what I mean? Like one of the things like that, like I wish I had done when I was pregnant, because I'm a working professional, I have some money, I would have paid for more things. Like I would have paid to have my house cleaned, like at least just through those periods of time, or, ordered the turkey dinner instead of like, I remember trying to get that stupid bird out of the oven, and it was so heavy, and there was all this hot grease, and, just stupid things we do. And, I think what you're talking about, because now I have this image of you in Staten Island sitting on a pillow cross-legged amidst like the cacophony of like New York energy just blaring around you. But many of us have that, we're freeway warriors. And, whether you're in Dallas or Chicago or New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco, traffic is traffic. And, we've got all these like snowstorms in Buffalo, and, there's all these, stress happens. It's part of it. So how do you create like I felt like you created this little Zen island in the middle of Staten Island that could be, like, as Dr. Joseph Gallagher says, just for you.
Yeah, I just made it a diligent practice, and I made sure, because I had actually taken a meditation workshop in Manhattan and it was like twice a week. It was last year. Oh no, it was 2 years ago, and it was about an hour and a half each, and they just kind of said, if you keep going, it's going to be easier it's going to become easier. But if you start and you stop and you start and you stop, it's like a plane trying to take off. Like, you're never going to get the momentum that you need to really be, to really have a calm mind. So I made sure that I just take, even if it's 30 seconds. And I always tell patients when they're like, I don't have time to do that, I always like stay quiet for 3 seconds. And I'm like, okay, just stay quiet for 3 seconds. So that's how long you need to like even just start meditating. Just take 3 seconds out of your day, and that'll grow. And then you'll love the way you feel when you start giving yourself that time to relax. And then you'll look forward to it, and then your body will get used to it, and then you'll start to like really calm your system. So I just forced myself to take time out of every day to meditate.
Well, and I think, we talk about like, meditation taking on different forms, like, like for me, I put it on my iPhone, and, I listen to this one, and, and I'm a creature of habit. So I like the same ritual. I like the same thing, but the weird things happens. It's like Pavlov's dog, I'm like pushing my nose in the bell to get some food, because like if the guy who did these CDs, has been on my show, like he'll call and leave a message for me, and I immediately start to relax at the sound of his voice, or every once once in a while when I'm really, really frenetic as a single mother with 2 kids and an 81-year-old dad living here, and I'm going 100 miles an hour, I'll stand in the kitchen, I'll make a cup of tea, and I'll go, and this time, just for you. And I do that voice, that I hear, like, that soothing voice, that they do in these guided meditations. And it cracks me up, but it does calm me down. So it's not like you always have to do, this half an hour meditation every single day. Like it's like a muscle or a habit or a technique. And then you can like kind of call it up. And I never knew you could do this because I never stuck with any practice long enough. But now I can call up that, like, I call it my Dr. G voice. And it's like, this time is just for you. And, I could be going in the bathroom or brushing my hair. And, it just kind of sets the stage for the right thing with your body. Does it change your chemicals? Do you know, like when you do that, do the chemicals change in your body too?
Well, I would assume because it does have a neurological effect on you. And if you have a neurological effect, it's going to affect, the hormone balances and stuff like that. So if it's changing your central nervous system, for sure, it's going to help. And
because you got all these hormones flying around anyway, making a baby. So, wouldn't it make sense that you'd want to kind of calm that system down as much as you can?
For sure. And it will absolutely help to impact pain intensity. Like it's just, and how your brain responds to it, because pain isn't technically in your back, it's in your brain, and it's how your brain is perceiving it. So if you can change neurologically how your brain is perceiving it, that's nociception, that's what it's called. It's gonna affect how you respond to it. So it's all about, attacking it neurologically. So doing...
wait a minute. I don't understand this. You said the pain's in your brain and not in your back?
Yeah, I mean, technically, it's the signals, right, going up into your brain. So it's not, the pain isn't in your disc in your back or in your sciatic nerve. It's like if you can control how your brain perceives it. So it's like how your brain is perceiving it is called nociception. So if you can regulate that and change how your brain is receiving it, then you can change how you're responding to it.
Oh, that's fascinating. This is stuff like, because you're a doctor and I'm a radio host. So what do I know? I don't know anything about pain other than, ow, like that hurts. So is that like, because there were some people, and of course, and I'm going to admit that I just was like, oh, you're going to be kidding me. Some of the natural birth classes I went to, and I did have a natural birth, that were
so brave you are.
so dumb you are. But they were like, you can control the pain through meditation. You can control the pain through hypnosis. So there's really some basis to that other than, like not paying for an epidural.
Right. I mean, it's, when they do like nerve blocks and all that stuff, like it's what your brain is perceiving. It's changing the signals to your brain. You could still be bleeding, you could still be whatever, but it's affecting how your brain is taking in that information. And then that's going to change how you respond to it.
So when you get an epidural and they shoot it in your back, is that just blocking those signals?
The signals.
So it's like causing a traffic jam in your spine. So the signals can't get through up to your brain to tell you it hurts.
Right.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah, because I was like, what are you doing back there? They stick this thing on your back and, then they're swabbing around and you're like, what are you doing back there? Like, this is, it's interesting that we can, kind of play with our bodies this way.
I mean, there's something that they give in physical therapy clinics, and it's called a TENS unit, and it's this electrical stimulation. It's just these little electrode pads that they put on the back, but what it's doing is it's kind of feeding another signal to go along different nerve fibers to get to your brain before the pain signals get to your brain. And so it kind of blocks that. It like closes the gate, they say, to the pain signals because the pain signals travel slower. So it's just about affecting the brain and the nerve signals. It's not like switching, you're not doing anything to the disc in the spine, or you're not doing anything to the muscle spasms. Particularly, it's affecting the neurological transmission of those pain signals and how your brain perceives it.
Wow, so like walking around with your cell phone, you get a good signal, you don't get a good signal because there's interference from something. You're actually creating interference.
Right, exactly.
Ooh. Oh, I'm gonna have a PhD by the end of today's show. So we have just a few minutes left in the show today, Dr. Jagroo. What's your best advice for someone who's either considering getting pregnant or is currently pregnant? From you wrote this book, you've got many years of experience, you run a clinic, you see thousands of women in your lifetime. What's your best advice to people, women, who are pregnant or considering getting pregnant?
I guess to not be afraid, because if, I think people are intimidated and they just assume that, back pain is going to come along after a certain point in the pregnancy. And, there really isn't a predictor of pain. Like if the woman is small and they're carrying big, it's not going to be a guarantee that you're going to have back pain, or if you're going to have pelvic pain. Really, the biggest predictor is if you had back pain or pelvic pain before, it's most likely going to intensify during the pregnancy. But, there are things you can do. And there are so many ways that you can prepare for the pregnancy. And again, self-treat, self-manage, and do very simple things to strengthen the muscles, to avoid certain positions that would make the pain worse or bring pain on. So, just moving forward without that fear or intimidation that it's just going to be a guaranteed, painful experience, and that you can recover. You can recover from even a traumatic labor and delivery. And these are all tissues and muscles we're talking about. So they all have healing properties, and there are ways to recover that are safe, and, things that you can do on your own to be healthy and ready to take care of your baby.
And where can we buy your book? Because, you just knocked it out of the park today. I thought, there was so much information for people. And if I do have another baby, you'll be my first on my list to call. Be like, okay, because it's just important. And I think, having your book on hand, having it as a resource, it should sit right on the shelf next to What to Expect and the Girlfriend's Guide, because this book, and I got to do it again, but this book is just for you.
Yeah,
but it is. It's there's not a lot of whole stuff out there that's just for the what'd you call it, the oven? The book for the oven.
The bun is going to be fine. Let's take care of the oven.
That's right.
Yeah, and I actually have a lot of people who have gotten the book where they say their husbands have been using it, because there's just a lot of great information for if you're just having back pain, sciatica, neck pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, things that you can do. We have precautions and accommodations for if you're pregnant, but there's just a lot of great things you can do and use it for with just, regular pain for the non-pregnant patient. So it's available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. You can also go to my site for some more information, which is drjagroo.com, and that's DRJ as in Jack, AG as in George, ROO.com. And you can find it. It's available now on the internet.
That is awesome. That is awesome. You just gave me the greatest imagery, because I'm thinking, this mom's in bed and she's pregnant and she's having all this back pain and she's reading your book, and, her husband comes in and he's like, oh, my back hurts. She could just throw the book right at him. Just read this, get out, because go take care of yourself. I'm here creating human life. Just leave me alone. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for a great show. I really do. We had a lot of fun today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I had a blast.
Yeah. All right, you guys, check her out, Dr. Jagroo. That's J as in Jack, AGROO.com. So we will come be back later in the season. And I can't wait till you have a baby, because then I'm going to bring you on and just grill you to death. Well, this is Sandra Beck from Motherhood Talk Radio, and we'll catch you again next week.
Thanks for being with us today on Motherhood Talk Radio, starring Sandra Beck. Motherhood Talk Radio brings you interesting, influential, and inspiring guests to help you be all you can be. Everything from great parenting tips to moms living with cancer, starting a family, or starting a business. Making the most of how you bounce back with style. Join us next week for another great guest you won't want to miss here on Motherhood Talk Radio, live every Tuesday afternoon on Toginet.com.